Hello, everybody. Welcome back. In this video, we shall look at some ideas that you can use in your Whack-A-Mole game to one, make it more interesting, to learn more from the game, and also obviously in this process to earn bonus points, right? So now this is a nice game which has lots of opportunities for you to explore further and learn more, right? However, before we get there, let's just look at a little bit of rules about the bonus. Let's say I always repeat this because I think these are very important. That number one, bonus comes after basic, right? So which means that be very clear with what you're trying to do, have the basic concepts in place before you attempt bonus, right? And in this particular game, the basic concepts are about this nested loop, are about cloning, are about, say, making the mole move up and down, and so on and so forth, right? So we have done a lot of things in this to accomplish the basic stuff. So make sure you're familiar with that, you're comfortable with that, and then you can try and attempt the bonus activities, right? Number two, you always earn bonus points, right? Now you never lose bonus points. Bonus points are given to you for doing something fantastic, something more than the ordinary, let's say. So you always earn them. As a result, what you can do for bonus is almost endless, right? So there's like infinite possibilities really in every game that we do. However, what earns you bonus today may not earn you bonus in future. That's simply because the level keeps going up. So bonus is your opportunity to push yourself, try out new things, and amaze everybody. However, remember rule number one, that bonus comes after basic. And I really emphasize this because be clear with the basics before you attempt bonus, because that's when you will enjoy the bonus part, right? And that's what it will be meaningful for you as well, right? So that's one thing I always emphasize: try to enjoy the whole process, right? So having said all that, let's look at some ideas for the Whack-A-Mole game and what bonus we could do for there, right? Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is that about pit placement, right? Now, remember the class game had 9 pits, so 3 rows of pits and 3 pits in each column, right? Now, there's really no compulsion that we must stick with 9 pits only. We can always have, say, a 3 cross 4 or a 4 cross 3, which means, say, 4 rows, 3 columns, or 3 rows, 5 columns, or something like that. And we can even be more adventurous and build, let's say, triangular pattern, right? So grids, maybe the pits appear in a certain pattern, right? Or they appear in a circular pattern, right? Now, obviously, all of this will require a little bit more thinking. I'm giving you some links in the description here, which you can use for a reference on how you could do some of this. But these are really interesting from a programming point of view, because you will see the power and also the utility of the nested loop that we have built, and which will also make you understand the whole thing much better, right? So it's really good to do it in a way. Now, having said that, the placement of grids can actually be made a part of levels, right? So you can possibly, let's say, have two or say more levels in this game. The first level probably has a 2 cross 2 grid, so you have 4 pits. Then after some time, maybe at some condition, probably score reaching some point, you say I'm going to the next level, and then you have a 3 cross 3 grid, right? That makes a nice practice in using broadcasting, in using you know let's say placement of these grids and so on and so forth. Again, I'm putting a project in the description which you can refer to see this idea in action, right? uh, Talking of different levels, you can think about maybe making the moles, say, more frequent as the time goes on, right? So if you go from level 1 to level 2, probably the moles start appearing a little bit more frequently or something like that, right? So you could do something of that sort as well when you go to the next level, right? Now, in general, for a game like this, a starting animation will be something that's always useful. So you can explain the rules of the game in the animation. Then you can have a start button, right? And then say, okay, fine, now the game is starting, and which will again require you to use, sequence in your mind what you want to do, and then use a broadcast, right? So that's why it's good. It adds value to the game. Don't make it very long, but something that explains the game briefly, and then you can get started, right? So that is something we will value. In the same way, when we are going to the next level, you can consider doing some amount of animation, right? So that the user is sort of guided through the whole process, right? Uh, Next, we can think of some innovation with respect to the costume. Now, in our game in the class, the mole basically is switching through 4 costumes, and it's going up and down in the process. But we can really do a little bit more here, and we can do a feature where if the mole is hit, it takes on a new costume, right? Now, again, I'm putting a project in the description. You could take a look at that, and that will give you an idea of what how this could be done, right? Moving on, I thought of something about the scoring, right? And I think it's quite interesting. Now, notice that we are giving a score whenever the hammer hits the mole. So that part is fine. But then in this game, right, there are many moles appearing, and we are actually probably hitting only a small percentage of those, right, or maybe a large percentage of those. But nonetheless, we are probably not able to hit every mole that is appearing, right? So what we could do is to potentially create something like a strike rate, that maybe you got, say, 30 moles coming out towards you, and out of that you hit maybe 18, so you had a strike rate of 60%, right, or something like that. So I think this will be quite interesting. It's not very hard to do. I'll talk about this when we get to the game. But this is something you could think about, right? And I think this will make an interesting feature, right? Now, a lot of innovation can be done on this game by introducing a new mole, right? So we had only one mole in the class, but really that need not be the case. We can have more than one mole, and then obviously we can have different scores for each of the moles, right? So now I can think of three ways of doing this. There may be more, but I'll tell you three methods that I can imagine here. First one could be to allocate certain number of pits for, say, mole number 1, and another set of pits for mole number 2, or maybe if you have more moles, then another set of pits, and so on and so forth, right? Now, here you can relate this back to the idea that I mentioned earlier, where I'm saying that you put, let's say, the pits in a triangular pattern. So probably you put the pits in a way that maybe a lower part of the triangle is for, say, a set of a particular kind of mole. The upper part is for another kind of mole, right, or something like that, right? So you can allocate pits according to the mole. Basically that will mean that when you clone or you duplicate these codes, you have to be careful which code is going for which mole, right? Apart from that, everything behaves the same, right? You can also do one thing, where you have two or more moles, right? What I meant is two moles going to the same set of pits, right? So here it was going to different set of pits. Another situation could be your two moles are going to the same set of pits, in which case you have to worry about moles falling on each other, and you will have to detect that condition of overlapping the moles, and then catching that situation, basically, right? Finally, I can think of a situation where you have, say, a surprise mole, right, which doesn't get cloned but comes randomly from one of the many pits, right? So here again, you have to worry about overlapping, but you do not need to do the cloning, right? So again, like I said, a lot of ideas can be built around these themes. Let's just see this in context of the game that we discussed in the class, right? So remember, in the class, we built a simple game where we had 9 pits and these moles coming out. Whenever I whack them, I get a point, and this game lasts for a certain amount of time, right? So the first thing that I said was that about the pit placement, right? Now remember, notice here I've got three columns and 3 rows, which means 9 pits. But there is no compulsion for me to keep it to 9. I can make it 15 pits, I can make it 16 pits. It's all about this code here and adjusting these x and y values, right? So if you play with this code, adjust the x and y values, you can get many different combinations. Like I said, if you are more adventurous, you can put these pits in, say, a triangle. Say, let's say these in a triangle, and then this another set in a triangle, right? You can put them in many different patterns by just adjusting, by just tweaking this code, right? So really, there's a lot of innovation possible here. The next thing that I talked about is to create different levels where we have, say, different patterns of pits, right? So probably your first level starts with, say, 4 pits, maybe 2 cross 2. In the next level, you have a 3 cross 3, right? Or maybe pits placed in a certain position or something like that, right? Another thing that I said is that when you switch to the next level, you can change the way the moles appear, right? So here it's appearing, say, 1 to 10 seconds. Maybe you can make it 1 to 5, right? When you go to the next level. So again, you will have to control this. You can have to put this in a variable and control how frequently the moles appear up and down, right? So that can be done for example, in level 2, right? Now, I also spoke about starting animation, right? Now, this is, well, in this game, we have not done that, but probably what could happen is that when I click the green flag, maybe I get a small message with some other backdrop, and then I have a start button here. When I click the start button, a broadcast is created, which basically triggers the formation of the pits, and I think everything else should kind of flow from there, right? Because remember, we first form the pits and then we broadcast for the broadcast grid ready, which triggers the moles and all to come out, right? So you could create an animation in the beginning. That's always good, not too long, but it could be nice and artistic. You can also create an animation when you go from, say, level 1 to level 2, right? So you can say, okay, now you're moving to level 2, now this will happen, something like that, right? But once again, you have to use broadcast to sequence all of this, right? And hence that becomes a bonus, this thing, right? Now, coming to the next thing, I said that the mole can take different costumes, right? Notice here the mole basically just switches through these four costumes, but then maybe I could also create a costume which, which has the mole, let's say, fallen down or something, right? So these four costumes are just creating the motion of mole going up and down, but I could do more than that, right? I could change its costume, in a funny way, in a artistic way maybe, and that could definitely become an interesting addition to this, right? Next, I talked about scoring. Right now, notice here in this game, whenever we hit the mole, for example, we get 1 point, right? So I got 1 point here. I'm getting say 3 points, 4 points, right? But I invariably I'm missing some moles, right? Like for example, I missed suddenly so many moles came, I missed them, right? So what if I could keep track of how many moles have appeared in all, right? And how do I do that? Well, basically it's very simple. So clones are started at the beginning, but whenever the mole shows up here, right, you could create a variable to keep track of how many times a mole has come out. So that will tell you the total number of moles that have come out. So somewhere here you have to put a variable called maybe total moles or something like that. And at the end of the game, maybe when the time is getting over, you can tell that, okay, look, so I scored 5, but maybe I had a chance to hit 10, right? So it's some kind of strike rate you can tell me. And I think that will be interesting, right? In fact, you can build on top of this ideas. If the strike rate is becoming too low, then you can warn the user, okay, look, got to do something about it, right? You're sort of falling apart. So I think a lot of innovation can be done from that point of view. Now, I spoke about more than one mole to create variations in this game, and in fact those are very, very powerful ideas. So let's look through one by one, right? So first thing I said is that you can have a situation where you have two moles. Maybe in my case, I can say there's another mole that is created, say mole number 2, whose costume is different, but it has a similar behavior that goes up and down. But mole number 2 appears only in these 3, let's say, and mole number 1 appears in these 6, right? So you have to basically place two sets of bits, right? Either two sets of bits, either by coding, or you can, allocate moles in a smart way so that they go only to these pits, right? So maybe in the mole you have to have two moles. One mole goes only to these 3 pits, another set of mole goes only to these say 6 pits, and of course this is only 9 pits. You can have more pits also being created, right? Now another thing you can do is that, yes, no problem, this every mole will go to every pit. I have 2 or more kinds of moles, so in which case I can duplicate the mole, right? I can give it a new costume, but all I have to make sure is that because these two moles may appear together, it may be very clumsy, so I can detect the fact that they are overlapping each other and delete one of the two. It's very similar to what we have done for the color ball game, where if the balls fall on each other, we delete one of the two, right? So you could have a code in mole, detecting whether it is touching the other mole, right? And then they can be sitting on going to every pit, right? Finally, you can come to a situation where a special mole, right? So it is not cloned, but a mole, basically another mole here, maybe it just pops up any one of these pits randomly. Right now you will have to write code to figure out, you have to randomly pick up these pits and send them to different locations, little bit like how we did for the to send the ball to the 4 different corners, right? So you could actually use lists for doing this, but there are other methods also, right? So you can have this special clone, special mole which appears in any of the pits, and if you hit that, you get some points, right? So the whole point is that there's lots and lots of innovation that can be done. I'm leaving several projects in the descriptions for your for your reference and for you to build on. So like I always end this video with, try to enjoy the process, try to see what you can do, but always make sure you're liking it, you're happy doing this, and then you'll be creative, and then you'll really have fun. Yeah. All right, take care. Thank you so much. Bye bye.